Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by Lance LaDuke, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania's Lance LaDuke, Niles, Michigan's Lance LaDuke.
City of Four Flags.
The City of Four Flags. I've asked you many times why it's called that, and you tell me every time, but I don't actually really care, so I never remember.
Fort St. Joseph was near Niles, and it was occupied by 4 different countries in a relatively short amount of time.
That's actually interesting. I
It is
think I would
interesting.
remember that. That's similar to New Orleans, which
Yeah.
has like...
Except less cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, I did not mean to be lumping Niles, which is a perfectly fine place, with one of the greatest cities in the world in New Orleans. But moving right along before we get emails, thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I like the fact that anybody who is listening to this rather than watching just like heard a little bit of a rumble of you picking up the instrument, but they don't know that you just pointed to your Lance LaDuke euphonium mouthpiece plugged into your flugabone. Is that what that is? Yeah. Hey,
Yep.
I got it right.
Nailed
All
it.
right. How about that? So we had last October, we had this tuba workshop, which was awesome. It was really great. We are actually going to have another one in early 2022. We'll be announcing that by the end of this year. We did a huge scholarship drive. It was awesome. This session, when we did this one, we knew, like, both of us right away, we were like, we are going to make this a Brass Junkies episode because it needs to be heard. This is Roger Bobo. Had you heard of Roger Bobo before we interviewed him, Lance?
I think I vaguely remember, because of the John Updike poem, I'd heard of him.
Boy, what a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember talking to him about it, but I remember watching him on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson when I was a kid and not understanding anything. I mean, but just like that, here's this tuba player on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And actually, our dear friend Richard A. White was just on
The Daily Show.
On The Daily Show.
How about
so
that?
Isn't that funny? That's kind of a interesting parallel there. I just
We
got
need
his
to get him
book,
back
actually. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Not to take away from Roger, but we should celebrate Richard for sure. That's a really awesome thing.
Yeah, it's available now. We will link to his book in the show notes. Roger climbed to the mountaintop as a orchestral player, as a soloist. He did a bunch of conducting. I mean, it's like, his career is just it's unbelievable. It feels like when you read everything he's done, if you didn't know who he was, you would think that it was made up. Somebody just added 80% of it to just see if anybody was actually reading it, to be like, there's no way that one person did all of this stuff. Well, yes, they did, and his name is Roger Bobo, and I think you're going to really love this conversation that we had with him. Wanted to let you know that we have a Patreon. Did you know that, Lance?
A what?
If you go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, I've been waiting for Lance to financially support the show for a while.
Keep waiting.
You can not only... Oh, that got real quick. You can get access to bonus episodes with all of our guests and a whole bunch of other content, and you can also just make more Brass Junkies episodes possible. There's probably enough expenses that it would surprise you that are recurring, and is a lot. And so thank you to everyone who has already done that, and also thank you to everybody who's left a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get the Brass Junkies. And if you've told a friend about it, or tell an enemy. I mean, a download's a download. If you think
That's
one
true.
of your enemies would love the podcast, and we're not looking for hollow downloads. We actually want people who like the show. Although I guess if you hate listen, right? We've talked about this before. Howard
That's true.
Stern's ratings. Remember in the Howard Stern movie when what is Paul Giamatti? Giamatti's
Pig vomit.
Yeah, his character like talks about how like the ratings were like, you know, like up for people who loved him, and then like up like, you know, no, the average listen time for people who hated him was like an hour and a half, and it's my favorite part of that movie. So listen to us if you can't stand us, that's fine. So Lance, I am mad that you don't support the show, but it's okay.
Okay.
I'll talk to you off air. Without further ado, let us get to the conversation that we had as a part of the 2021 Brass Junkies Tuba workshop with tuba legend Roger Bobo.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more content by the Brass Junkies, just click on the like and subscribe button. You'll have an opportunity to see some of the greatest brass players in the world, and Andrew and me.
Our next guest on the Brass Junkies Tuba workshop is perhaps the most famous tuba player of all time. I'm going to just get all the nice stuff out at once, and then I'll stop, I promise. He has, it would take me half of the session to read his bio, so I won't, because you've all got Google. But as I said at the very end of the Royal Lance class, he has basically climbed to the top of the orchestral world, of the chamber music world, of the solo world, and of the teaching world, and has done it all over the world. I just said the word world an awkward number of times in that paragraph. But his name is Roger Bobo, and we are truly honored to have him here. So please give me a hand. That's not what I meant. I did not mean.
Here's to Andrew Hitz.
Thank you.
Way to go, Andrew.
I want everyone to acknowledge how great my intro was. No, please help me give a hand to Roger Bobo. That was super awkward. So, Roger, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. I'm glad you asked me.
So for everyone who is here, who is joining us, we are, first of all, I need to thank Jupiter Band Instruments and Eastman Music Company and Conselmer and a whole bunch of individuals who, a lot of them wanted to remain anonymous, who helped us raise a ton of money to hand out 125 scholarships from South Africa to Brazil to Slovenia and everywhere in between. So thank you to everyone's generosity, and especially those three companies. If you have any comments, not comments, if you want to tell Roger what you think of him, no, if you have any questions is what I was trying to say, please use the Q&A feature, which you can find, and we're going to kind of sift through those, and we're going to have Roger entertain us with his wisdom and his wit for no pressure for an hour. So, so go ahead and get those questions coming in. We've got a good one here from Brian. Maestro Bobo, what were some of your struggles and successes when you recorded your first album, and what would you suggest to up and coming musicians to record albums of their own?
Well, first of all, to answer the second part of the question, I would say get some exclusively your own repertoire. Show new things. You know, it's we don't want to hear so much the 523rd performance of Carnival of Venice.
Preach.
And we have an advantage now with an extraordinary repertoire, and it's coming in very fast. New things.
That's great.
Then, in terms of the challenges when you were recording your albums, does anything jump to mind? Any stories or particular obstacles you had to overcome?
Not really. I had a good recording engineer for that time. You know, it was 1966, I think. You know, that makes it 54 years ago, or 55 years ago. And I just played, and I had a pianist, and that I didn't need to do anything else. Everybody else took care of stuff for me. And the logistics were done pretty much. So I just had to come in and perform.
How long did you prepare for like that specific, I know this was a very long time ago, but how long did you prepare that repertoire for?
Well, I already knew that repertoire because that repertoire, I played several recitals in Holland, in Amsterdam, where I had just come from. And before that, I was at Eastman, and I did the Carnegie Hall recital, which I think was in '62. So I had that repertoire ready to go.
Tell us about playing at Carnegie Hall. What was that like?
Well, it was another thing. Everything was arranged for me. I showed up and played, but it was magical because, I was very aware of where I was and the mystique and the traditions that came with that name. And it was Carnegie Recital Hall. I don't want to give the wrong impression. And debut recitals ordinarily are not sold out, but this was sold out. Every seat was taken, and I don't know how that happened, but it was. It was also, it might have been because it was billed as the first tuba recital in New York City. So that gave a lot of momentum to that event. And well, I played repertoire, mostly that I had learned in school. Of course, the Hindemith and other things, and a few pieces that were written for me in the late 50s.
So I don't want to say it's commonplace now that there are tuba soloists, but it's not newsworthy. It's become more of a thing. Now, this was definitely not the case. And I think when you came along, and I think that I don't think, it's clear that you chartered a path that has forever changed the instrument in incredible ways. I don't mean that as false modesty. That's just the facts. But there was the time before you and the time since. And so when you were, did it occur to you how big of an impact it was going to have on the instrument when you set out, or maybe you didn't set out to be a soloist, but when this path laid out, did you have any sense of what was to come?
Well, first of all, I had no sense of the future. I was up for that recital that night, and after that, I didn't give it much consideration. But I was very happy that it went the way that it did. There's a certain amount of, I don't know what you call it, advantage to being the first one at something. And I got it. And then I got the reviews because it was booked as the New York's first tuba recital. And I got really good reviews, which only served to launch me into going ahead and doing that kind of thing, to wit, the recording that we were talking about, which is sort of the next step in the same direction.
Yeah, well, your advice to tuba players to play music that is truly their own and not just what everyone else did before them is the exact same point that you just made, which was you had, in the business world, that's called like first mover advantage, where no one else can be the first tuba recital in New York. However, if you're just doing a tuba recital that so many other people have and you're playing the same music that everyone else has, it's very difficult to get any attention because it's not really, that worth talking about between people who aren't involved. And so I think your advice is right on.
And I think that I would also advise people to allow themselves to be unique. Allow yourself to be different. Take the chance and do something different, and it may go for you.
That's wonderful.
Well, and even if it doesn't go for you, at least it was a thing you believed in. It wasn't you were trying to fit some box that you thought might be successful.
It's so important, I think, to have the courage to be unique. Because if you're following somebody else's MO, then you're going to be a shadow of somebody else.
Yeah, you won't be very happy, and you probably won't do a very good job at it. There was already one of those. So we do want to spend a not insignificant amount of time talking about just the practical aspect of playing the tuba. So you've given a lesson or two over the years. Would you say there are certain common issues that you see come up and that you have to address with regularity?
I'm not sure how to answer that question. I mean, Are you alluding to tuba prejudice?
No. I mean, when you're meeting new students, are there certain sets of challenges that come up with regularity that you tend to have to deal with certain issues more than others?
Every student is a new experience. And maybe I have to get them used to working on the music and less attention to the various aspects of technique, which I can deal with. But once they get the music in their mind, then we can go to the technical skills to realize the music they have in their mind. You know, everybody has two tubas, one in their mind and one in their hands. And the one in their mind is the boss. The one in their hands is stupid.
Yes, it is.
So then developing a sense of the music that they hope to make is the lead. That's the primary focus then, yes?
Yeah. I mean, you know, maybe some beginning students. I'm teaching a lot online now. And I have students at an earlier stage of their development than I ordinarily had when I was working at various institutions. And it's caused me to take another direction. Each student is different, but, you know, we're learning how to play the first pages of the Arbin book. And that's, my God, was he a genius. Arbin did it so well, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And to help them to get started on that kind of thing is a real challenge for me. I enjoy it a lot. I never thought I would, but I am.
Are there certain other resources like the Arbins that you tend to gravitate towards?
I'm still learning about the very beginners. Arbin seems to cover it really well, and I'm not lacking on any other things. Sometimes my book can work for beginners too. This one, maybe you've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's things in there for the most advanced people and for the very beginners. And some of the things at the very beginning of this book, are really good for people just starting. Breathing exercises, for example.
Well, it looks like we have some questions. There's a question about how long you've been playing. I don't actually know the answer to that.
Well, let's see. I got my first job in 1956, and that's 64 years, I think. And I got my job in the Rochester Philharmonic in 64 years. And I guess I started 6 years before that. That would make I've been playing tuba or dealing with tuba for 70 years. Mama mia.
If you want to feel even older, Roger, I know the person who just asked that question, Isabella, and she's been playing, I think, for 2 years. So for 1/35 of the amount of time that you've been playing. So, oh goodness. Let's see here. Michael Kirby, Maestro, what do you look back on as one of your favorite events or times in your life? What do you view as a highlight of your career, educationally, performing, or personally?
That's the perfect question because I have it written down in front of me that somebody was going to ask me that.
Hey, I'm assuming that your entire career has culminated in this appearance at our tuba workshop. But other than that, what's your highlight?
Well, you know, I think going to Interlochen as a high school student and running into other kids like me who love music and were experiencing the collective experience of playing symphonic music or brass music for the first time with other people who were my equal. And I still have friends. I have very close friends who I met first in 1954 at Interlochen. And some of us went on to Eastman together, and some of us ended up in the LA Philharmonic together.
Wow.
And we still communicate. And one of them, his name is Boyd Hood, he was trumpet player in the LA Philharmonic, and we started in 1954. And 1 year ago, right now, he was in Oaxaca visiting me. We had a great time.
Wow.
But the premium time, I think the times that I most enjoy were those times at Interlochen and at the Eastman School of Music. And I was fortunate to be playing in the Rochester Philharmonic all that time. But I had student orchestras in the Eastman Wind Ensemble and brass quintet and solo recitals. And when we were free, I would, we would collect in somebody's dormitory room and listen to orchestras and play games guessing which orchestra it was, which we became very good at.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always this camaraderie and always learning on the job or in the rehearsals, in the classes, or hanging out with my friends. That was invaluable, and I will appreciate that for the rest of my life.
Wow. It's a great answer. Awesome. Let's see. In terms of memories, here's a question from Jatik Clark, who, for anyone who doesn't know that name, is the wonderful principal tubist of the Oregon Symphony. Any fond or standout memories / experiences with your stint with the Concertable Orchestra?
Well, sure. I had encounters with various conductors from, great conductors of the whole world. I have one story. I hope I can tell it. You may have to bleep me. Do I have your permission?
I say we go.
Well, yeah.
Pierre Monteau was conducting the Concertable. And I was sort of a naive kid. I was 23 years old, and I wrote a perspective for a United Nations orchestra because I was in a foreign land for the first time in my life with languages that were not English. And I showed this perspectives that I drew up to the manager of the Concertable Orchestra, and he gave it to Pierre Monteau. Do you know Pierre Monteau?
I know the name.
He's the man who conducted the infamous world premiere of La Sacre, the Rite of Spring.
Oh.
And I think the Daphnis and Chloe by Ravel and Petrushka and the Rite of Spring and Firebird. And he was a giant. He was a giant. He invited me to lunch in Amsterdam. We went to Amsterdam's best hotel, and I was eating lunch with Pierre Monteau. And I was told, do not ask him about the riots that followed the Rite of Spring. Well, of course I did.
Roger.
And,
how do you not?
And and I was this kid and sort of nervous. And he goes like this, Roger, I think you are nervous because you're a young American tourist, and I'm the great conductor, French conductor, Pierre Monteau. And I said, yes, sir, yes. He said, Roger, there is one thing you must always remember. Do not get nervous with me. Remember this, and please remember. Everyone must take down their pants to shit.
Wow.
He said to me, Vladimir Horowitz, Yasha Eipitz, and even I, the great Pierre Monteau, must take down my pants to shit. You have bleep to take to bleep?
I think we'll let that one slide. Pretty good.
I like the fact that he called himself the Great twice in one story. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, way back then, well, you could argue still now, but especially way back then, conductors tended to do and say whatever they wanted all the time, and a lot of them had very inflated opinions of themselves.
Well, I think he was making a joke out of it because he's quite a I mean, he's a normal guy. How could he say those things and be an uptight old man? You
This
know?
is true. And he is a genuine legend. That's not someone who's like borderline legend calling themselves a legend. That's like, yeah, that's awesome. So Tom McCaslin of the Calgary Symphony.
He's an old friend of mine from a long time back. Master classes all over the world and
Yeah.
Lausanne Conservatory. And yeah, good friend.
He's awesome. He says your last recital was 20 years ago with an exclamation point. It was great with 2 exclamation points. I like to point out that Shatik thought that Mike Roylance's masterclass was 3 exclamation points. Tom only thought your recital was 2, but I'm not trying to start anything. What do you miss about playing the tuba in recital?
Well, I don't miss it too much until I hear other people doing it. And I hear something, man, I would love to play that. And it's not only recitals, but lately I've been getting back into listening to symphonic music. And if I hear a Mahler symphony or a Rite of Spring or, you know, Prokofiev ballets, I just really wish I could play that again. Playing the tuba is a very athletic function.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm 82. I'm not going to go out and not play well. And if I went out to play, it would not be well.
Is there is there particular repertoire that you've heard in the last 15, 20 years that you go, these are some pieces that I could get my arms around?
Well, you know, I think the last thing I really sat down, it was passing. I was browsing on the internet and found, oh man, that's Mahler 7th with Chicago. I'm going to listen to a few bars. I was glued to the computer, to the internet for the whole performance. It was great. And I was feeling very nostalgic, and I was feeling the energy of the music. I can remember being on tour, and especially on tour, some foreign country, playing Mahler First, which we did hundreds of times in Los Angeles, the Mahler Fifth, and saying, if I could reach those highs again.
Yeah.
It's nostalgia and intense musical energy. I miss that.
Any solo repertoire that has caught your ear that you think, oh, that would have been a fun one to take a whack at?
I just was helping somebody online with the Plough Concerto the other day, and I thought it was very, very good. I spent maybe 15 years of my life playing exclusively avant-garde music, almost. I've gone back in the other direction now. You know, I'd rather hear the Schubert Serenade or the Bach Air for the G string or something than that, like that.
It's interesting. So we have actually one of the other questions is from Joe Wright, which is apropos of this. He says, what are your personal thoughts on tubists borrowing repertoire from other instruments?
That's a good question, because when I was maybe just graduating from Eastman, going to Amsterdam and back to Los Angeles, I was very conservative. I had in my mind, for some reason, that we shouldn't play transcriptions. We should play only new pieces. And that confined us to just the new pieces, which back in the mid-50s was a handful of pieces.
Right.
Like 3 or 4. And now you can think that way, but there's another part of it. The beautiful music of the world. We have to play it. And, you know, I don't have to sell that idea because everybody's doing it now. And I think it's correct. And I think it's advantageous to the listeners and to the players. And it's more saleable. You're going to get more people coming in to hear somebody play the Schubert Serenade than even one of the great pieces from the 60s era, 70s era, the Kraft Encounters, which is a great piece. But I think if you're going to do the Kraft Encounters, you have to put Schubert Serenade on the same concert. Well, that's symbolism of what you're dealing with. Otherwise, you're going to have a lonely life.
That was, I thought that you just put a very fine point on that. I love it. Jacob Titel, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, Jacob. He says, can you talk about your experience championing new repertoire? What were some of your creative joys / roadblocks in your process?
Well, I think I just talked about it. I had a lot of pieces that were written for me. And, you could probably figure out that the first couple came from Eastman people. There's a beautiful piece, the first piece that was ever written for me, called Two Songs by Robert Spillman. I still love that music. And there's another piece, Suite Concertante by Armin Russell, which I played as the final number of my New Carnegie Hall recital. And then I got into more avant-garde stuff and collaborated with a group of guys called the Los Angeles Brass Quintet. And that was a good outlet too. But this repertoire was getting more and more far out. And I was liking it less. And I was doing it because that's what I did. And I always wanted to be involved in something new. Okay, let's do this. I haven't done this ever before. And, there was yelling and screaming and stamping my foot and multiphonics and, playing inhaling instead of exhaling and all this stuff. And frankly, around 1978 or 79, I got disgusted with it and almost stopped doing it. And then there's the craft. I kept doing it. It was a very good piece. And a piece by Henri Lazaroff, which is called Cadence Number 5. It was a great piece. And there were some great pieces. But a lot of that stuff is passé now. And there's great new music for tuba. One of my favorite composers of the new music for tuba is Roland Simpali.
Yeah.
He's a tubist. He's a great tubist. But I think he's even a greater composer, if you can imagine that. He's in the class with Stravinsky and Bartok. And he's written tuba concertos and a piece called Ballade for tuba. And he's writing another tuba concerto now. This is fantastic, beautiful music. And it's not stuck into, let's see how outrageous we can be. It's stuck in musical beauty and musical intensity.
He's wonderful. Yeah, he's really wonderful. We just actually had back-to-back questions, which are essentially the same. Grace and Candace. Grace asked, what would you say is the reason you played for as long as you did? And then Candace asked, did you ever have points in your career where you felt sick of tuba? What kept you going?
Poignant questions.
Right?
First of all, I quit rather early. I think I quit. I played my last recital. I don't remember the date. Maybe it was 70. And I played a recital in Riva del Garda in Italy at a music festival where I played every year and taught every year. And I billed it as my last recital. I had friends coming from all over the world for that recital. And it was in an outdoor courtyard of an old castle. It was a great event. And afterwards, we all went to the local pizzeria and enjoyed a big party. I think it was 62. And McCaslin would know that. He was probably there.
He just wrote in all caps, "It was awesome." So yes. No exclamation points, but the all caps, I think.
Yeah, where's the exclamation point?
You're phoning it in, McCaslin. Come on. Wow, so that's real. I was going to ask you whether you had planned for it to be. He now just responded with 20 exclamation points, with nothing else there. So I was going to ask you if you billed it or if you knew ahead of time whether that was going to be your last recital. And so was that a real closure for you?
I had decided to stop playing. I had a recording session scheduled with an Italian band to do the Vaughan Williams concerto, which is a piece, that's the piece I learned how to play tuba on. I met Vaughan Williams when I was 15 years old. God, he promised me he'd send me the first copy, which he did do.
Wow.
And I still have that. And somewhere in the world, there's a picture of me with him. He's got his arm on my shoulder. You know, I'm this adolescent kid, and he's Vaughan Williams. And yeah, the Vaughan Williams was what I learned how to play on. So when I had this recording date, there was even the date, the contract, I started practicing. And I knew how I wanted it to go. I knew every way I wanted that to go. I couldn't make it sound as great as I wanted. So I canceled the recording and decided on a event date for my last job, which was really an excuse to gather all my friends together in a beautiful place and have a wonderful time.
Wow.
The first half of the concert was recording, and the second half I conducted the band. So
wow.
I was hoping that would be symbolic, and I was in a little bit. I didn't conduct as much as I wanted to, but I did conduct a lot of things for the last years.
I have to tell a very quick story about the Vaughan Williams because Maestro Bobo here came to Northwestern University in, I believe, 1995 was the year when I was a student. And I played the Vaughan Williams for him. And before I started, you were talking, you know, like as you do between students, and then you came around and said, "What are you playing?" And then you looked, and as I started to say what it was, you said, "Hold on a second," and you stood up and you held my music up because my Vaughan Williams page, about half of it was stained with red wine. And you said, "I have not heard this young man play a note yet, but I can already tell we are going to get along quite well." And then so that was funny.
I also had coffee stains on mine.
And I was actually looking at the at the chat and the questions, and I was paying attention to you, but I heard you say like that you met Vaughan Williams when you were 15. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry, what was that? Like, wait, you met Vaughan Williams? Like, yeah, you forget that these are not only people, but people that were around not that long ago, relatively speaking. That's pretty neat.
Something that people don't know about Vaughan Williams, that he was almost totally deaf.
Huh.
I think he was equally deaf to Beethoven. You know, he was deaf. He gave a lecture at UCLA just before I met him, and there was all these musicologists in there, and I went in and crashed it. Heard this lecture. They were playing musical examples, and he didn't know when the music stopped. He had to ask. I said, "Music stopped now?" So I went in and crashed the reception. And I was a very shy and 15-year-old kid with all these really high-class musicologists, suit and ties. And I think maybe I had more than Levi's and a t-shirt, but I was in there. And had to go through the reception line. And Mrs. Vaughan Williams, very nice lady, her name was Ursula. I met her several more times in my life. And she had this laser beam voice that drilled into your mind. And I was trying to be as low profile as possible, because I'm sure I wasn't supposed to be there. I was sure that I was not supposed to be there. And she would talk to him. And she talked to me. I told her who I was. And then she said, so he could hear this far from her ear, "Ralph, this young man is a young American tubist, and he's wondering about the tuba concerto." So that was the end of low profile. It might have been a turning point in my life. I don't know.
That's awesome. Leo wants to know, do you use singing in your approach to practicing and playing?
Yes. Sure, and especially in teaching. Yeah, absolutely.
So David Topping wanted to know who your teacher was at Interlochen in 1954.
His name was Mr. Simmons.
Mr. Simmons.
Yeah.
All right, I believe you. I have no reason to doubt you.
Well, there were two of them. The other name I can't remember right now because it was 8 weeks of my life. Each time at Interlochen, I went 3 years in a row, and for 8 years. And those 3 years were giant pivots in my life. And I think if I had gone to Eastman without going those 3 years to Interlochen, I don't know. I don't think I would have made it. Eastman prepared me for what I was going to live for it took 5 years to get my master's degree. So I was there for 6 years, and 1 year just in the Philharmonic. And then I got Concertable.
There's another sort of related question. It says, many of us grew up to your sound as our guide as to what we wanted to sound like. Whose sound was your biggest influence, either on the tuba or another instrument? Was there someone you were attempting to emulate or that helped inform the sound that became yours?
Well, I think the two brass players that influenced me the most when I was a little boy were Rafael Mendez and Harry James.
Mm.
And Harry James, we think of as a commercial trumpet. He was a giant. He was a giant trumpet player. He was doing remarkable things. And so I think I picked good guys. And now I'm in Mexico. I also have to say that I was influenced by mariachi bands because I was a little kid. I could reach up to the knobs of the radio, and I knew if I put the dial between 1 and 0 in the number 100, I could hear mariachi music. And I just loved to hear those trumpets playing in the 3-part harmonies.
Do you think that had an impact in putting you on a course to becoming a soloist?
Yeah. Yes, I do. I think so. Because, of course, I was influenced by Jacobs. There was an old recording of a Beethoven string quartet with Jacobs, Hertheth, and what's his name? Oh, he makes trumpets. Biggest trumpet company in America. I can't remember the name. Schulke. He was playing second trumpet, and I forgot who was playing horn. And I had this LP. Does everybody know what an LP was?
I've got some.
I had this LP. It was transparent red plastic.
Whoa.
And then the first track was a Beethoven string quartet, and I heard Jake going, bum, 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 ba-da-da-bum-bum-bum. And I said, my God, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That was a big influence. And there was another tuba player that you probably won't know. His name was George Bouget. And he was the tubist with MGM.
Oh.
And you may know this. He played Tubby the tuba on the recording where Danny Kaye was the narrator. That's extraordinarily wonderful tuba playing. And actually, he sold me my first C tuba. I think I was 14 at that time.
Wow.
He played at MGM Studios in Hollywood.
How did your parents react to this kid who wants to play the tuba? This was not, I want to be a baseball player. I want to be a movie star. I want to play the tuba. How did they obviously were very supportive, or they weren't paying attention, one or the other.
And at the same time, Etienne is asking, why did you decide to pick up the tuba and learn how to play it? So maybe answer all that at once.
Okay. Well, you say maybe they didn't pay any attention. I think that was the only way they could have survived. I was sort of a fanatic practicer. And, that playing the tuba was my musical outlet. It was my psychotherapy. It was, everything. That's what I did. And 8 hours a day was not unusual for me. I wouldn't recommend that to students. I didn't know that I was beating up my lip, but in the long run, I think I developed it. But yeah, why did I play the tuba? They were supportive, but they didn't know. They didn't understand. They didn't know. I mean, my father was born in 1886. I watched the moon landing with my father 53 years ago or something.
Wow.
And he said, by golly, Rod, can't believe this. When I was a boy your age, I went up on the old road and I saw my first car. That was back in 1909.
Wow.
So I had a sort of, I'm intrigued by going back and describing things. And I got that little extra lift into history because of my father. And so, I played the tuba, number one, because I was never a very interesting kid when I was in grammar school. And they took 5 or 6, maybe 8 school students from the 6th grade and took us to the local high school where we would be going the next year. And they put us in the room, the band room of Eagle Rock High School. And I went in there and I saw this sousaphone in the corner, sitting on a stand. And they told us very strictly to not touch anything. I went crazy for that thing. I got inside of it. I put my hand on the lead pipe and started playing it. And I had played cornet and a young kid, and I could play stuff. And I played my 2 favorite songs on the sousaphone, which I understood in seconds. Oh, this is 2 octaves lower than my trumpet. Otherwise, it's just the same. So I played Sweet Leilani and the Syncopated Clock. And, I played it all right because I could play it all right on the cornet. And in doing so, I got a bunch of kids, high school kids and kids from my grammar school gathered around. And I'd never attracted any attention before about anything in my whole life. So it got me attention. And it got me in a lot of trouble because we weren't supposed to have touched anything. So I think that I was experiencing, in a way, the forbidden fruit syndrome. And, I was hooked. And when I entered the school, I took a beginning instruments class in the tuba, and I bloomed quickly.
I like how hey Roger, don't ask Pierre Monteau about the riots after Rite of Spring. Ask about Rite of Spring. Hey Roger, don't touch the sousaphone. Roger grabs sousaphone, performs first recital for people.
Don't tell me not to do anything. I'm going to do it.
That's it.
Oh, goodness. I think next time if I ask you if you're free for an event, I'm going to tell you not to show up, and then you're just going to pop on the screen. Oh, goodness. Let's see here. Brian says, my question is how exactly you decided your route and influences that helped that. Not being able to get those important experiences in my freshman year of college this year due to COVID has hindered one of the ways that helps me think about that, about what I want to do with education or playing. So he's curious, how did you choose your path, or did it choose you?
It chose me. I started the beginning instruments class, and then my high school teacher invited me to play a solo with the band. And there was the music festivals in the school system. And so it went, and it just went. And I was up for anything. And then I ended up at Interlochen, and now I've told you that story. But now's a different time because you are confined at home. What's happening now, which I think is a wonderful thing, it's the positive part about COVID, is that people are doing things online that they would never have been inspired to do otherwise. So now we have these events, and some of them are spectacular, and some of them are sonically beautiful. And kids who are cyber savvy are able to put some fantasy of theirs on for 5 minutes on the internet, and there are amazing things.
Yeah.
So to Brian, I would say, you know, hang out on the internet, listen to what people are doing. There's very interesting stuff going on. And I would say also, when COVID's over, these things are going to continue.
Yes.
COVID's bad. These little events that are happening on the internet because of COVID are good.
Yeah. Oh, so well said. Yeah, there's so much creativity around, and I am trying to. I'm telling all of my students, and I'm trying to remember myself that because of COVID, I'm trying to be patient with myself because some days there are stretches where I'm feeling very creative and motivated, and then there's been others in the last year, which I very much not. But when I'm feeling creative, there's so much inspiration around, and then there's the ability to create so many things. It's kind of an exciting time.
It is. You know, sometimes I get down, you know, if I was traveling a lot. I was traveling all over the place. I came back last March from Japan, expecting in 10 days to go across the United States to play at various universities or to teach at various universities, and then go to Italy, to Slovenia, to Switzerland, and to Israel. And in 3 or 4 days, I realized it wasn't going to happen, which is a big financial hit, as well as an artistic disappointment. But mainly it was an artistic disappointment. So I get down sometimes on things like this. You know, when I get this invitation, I was not down. I was ready. Okay, cool. Now I got something to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, we're glad, and I didn't tell you not to do it. I asked you if you would, and you still said yes. So that's good. Abby would like to know what have your students taught you while you worked with them?
My students have been my premium teachers all my life since I first started teaching. You know, which I guess I was 18 or 19 when I first started giving lessons, and I started learning more lessons from them than I have from any teachers I've had. And I've had great teachers. But the students steered me in directions that forced me to answer questions that I had never thought to go after before. So the students make our best teachers. And that allows, and you know, that puts me back to being at Eastman and in my student community where we would listen to music together and we would do everything together. And those were the years when I learned the most. And they also were the years where I realized that my principal teacher, the number one teacher in my life, and of all of my students' life and your lives, is yourself. That's the number one guy.
Yeah.
And after that, you start listening to, I like to think of teachers as guides. They're guides that lead you in interesting directions, but you're the one who goes there.
How did I don't know if this is even answerable, but do you have a sense of how your teaching evolved or changed over time? So when you were teaching at 19 versus 39 or 59 or 79, how do you approach it differently, or what have you learned about the teaching process, I guess, or how's that developed?
Yes, I do approach it very differently because I hear young people, and egotistically, I'd say some of them were my students, who have developed themselves to a degree that surpassed anything that I had ever dreamed of. And of course, I learned from them, and I am turning to their knowledge to impart that secondhand on my newer students. But you have to you listen to Roland Sinpali and Sergio Carolino, and they're into a new dimension. And I'm missing people, of course. There's Velvet, and there's Perry, and there's Anayela, and all these people.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Aristotle who said it's the duty of the teacher it's the duty of the students to surpass their teacher.
Yeah.
Well, I've experienced those students doing that many times, and it's a wonderful feeling.
That's awesome. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, that is. Here's one from Abel. Thoughts on balancing C and F tuba practice?
50-50, if you're lucky enough to have two tubas, until you have something upcoming. If you have a tuba recital and the recital is exclusively on F, then make it 10-90 or 20-80 in favor of the F. If you're playing Bruckner symphonies or Bruckner ballets, then 10-80 in favor of the C. It has to do with what you need, but I think it's very important to maintain both of them. It's hard to cover all necessary musical tasks with only one. And I hate to put that out there because there are a lot of people who can't do anything else but use one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who don't have one.
Yeah.
Here in Mexico, for example.
Right. William would like to know what setbacks, such as embouchure issues, for example, did you encounter, and how did you overcome them during your playing career?
I think I was lucky. I had very few. I had a period where I had difficulty making soft attacks. I had a period where there's a little bit of leak here. And I had a period where the high register had a buzz in it. But I think I never had anything significant. And they all went away. The problems went away.
How did you address, for example, the leak in the corner of your mouth?
I don't know. I said, I got to get rid of that. It's going to have to go away. And it did. I'm sorry, I can't answer your question.
Oh, no.
Well, no, I think it's oftentimes I think we can make a problem as big as we want to, or we can just decide we need to solve this thing. And I don't mean that every problem is solved by wishing it away like the Harold Hill think method, but I think that if you don't, it seems like you just didn't get in your head about it. You just decided this is a thing that this just needs to stop happening.
Yeah. I would look in the mirror and try to pinch it. But I think you're absolutely right. I didn't make a big thing out of it, and I continued. It was so subtle, I don't think anybody noticed except my teacher at the time.
Delton would like to know, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself as a younger high school musician?
I would say, don't be a prima donna. Jacobs told me something once that I thought was wonderful. He said, Roger, there's really only two kinds of brass players in the world. And this is not what he said, but I'm going to refine it. There are aggressive personalities, and there are aggressive personalities who have learned how to be nice guys. You have to be careful which one we choose.
Oh, that's great.
That's really fun. That's a good one.
He didn't say aggressive personality.
Yeah. We'll read between the lines.
So, are there any? Michael would like to know: are there any pieces you wish you were able to conduct or perform that you didn't?
Sure.
Next question.
Which
I'd love to conduct Mahler First Symphony. You know, I played that in Rochester. I played that in Amsterdam maybe 80 times. That was the piece that the orchestra was playing. It was the 75th anniversary of that. And I played it hundreds of times in Los Angeles. I would love to conduct that. I know everything about that symphony. I would love to conduct Tchaikovsky's Sixth.
Yeah.
That's what else? I'd love to try Rite of Spring. I was very lucky when I was living in Italy, which is where I went after I left Los Angeles. And I was there overlapping with Switzerland for 13 years. And I was the director of the brass section. I would conduct the brass section through all the repertoire. And that allowed me to conduct a lot of the big repertoire. And that included Rite of Spring, that included Mahler Fifth, and, a lot more repertoire. Tchaikovsky Sixth was one of them. And then they played all the big tuba pieces when I was working in what's called the Orchestra Giovanile, the Italian youth orchestra. And I was a part of that orchestra. I adored that job.
So let's see here. We've got about 4 minutes left. Mike Roylance would like to know, what do you feel are the most important qualities needed in teaching the next generation of Roger Bobos?
Well, I really don't know, but I'm open for finding out the answer as time goes by and I encounter these new students, and particularly the students online. I might need a new guy, and by the second lesson, I've developed a new style to try to touch the right way to approach this individual. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great answer. I'd like to know, if you had a hypothetical here, if you had to go back and do your whole life again, but you knew that you could only play all the orchestral things you did, or you could only do all the solo stuff you did, or you could only do all the teaching, or you could only do all the conducting, which one of those would you want to relive if you had the ability to relive only one of them?
Well, I'll always wonder if I could have been a successful conductor if I had concentrated on conducting at the age of 18,
right,
and not tuba.
Right.
I always wonder about that. I don't regret anything, but I'll always wonder about that. But as far as the various aspects of playing the tuba, they all supported each other.
Right.
The orchestra, the solo, the chamber music, all the aspects of playing, they all supported each other. And I can't imagine one without the other. And conducting supported them.
Well, let's see here. We got 2 minutes left. I think maybe we just spend the last 2 minutes of heaping praise on him so he gets uncomfortable. Lance, does that sound good?
Could be. I mean, I've been sitting on the fact that I remember watching you on the Tonight Show as a kid, and that was my grandfather was a jazz drummer, and
I was already old when that happened.
Well, to me, I just, it really charged me up. There was an appreciation for music in my house, and I would just remember just being so amazed at those appearances. And I don't know how many decades ago that is now, but I just remember laying on the floor watching the television, staying up way too late because here was going to be this tuba player was going to be on, and my parents thought enough of it and understood that it was an important and interesting thing and let me stay up and watch it. Was just a gift I'll never forget. And so to get to share some time with you is a gift for me. So just personally, that just sort of brings this all full circle from when I was, just a kid.
I have an outline for the closer of the other lecture I'm going to do today. And the last thoughts that I have is listen. Listen to music. We learn by listening, whether you're consciously listening or passively listening, the information is going into your mind. And at some point, you're going to be playing something and saying, oh yeah, it's got to go. I know how it goes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's awesome. Well, this was incredible.
You guys sure helped me. I was sort of worried. I honestly thought I was going to have to talk for an hour, and I was petrified. So thank you.
Oh my goodness. No one's ever accused us of being tight-lipped.
I am known for my brevity, so yes. No, this was really great. And also there were a lot of questions we didn't get to, a lot that we did. The questions were fantastic.
Yeah,
and that
really
also, it's funny, we made your job easy, but the questions made our job easy. So it was like, yeah, the students did the heavy lifting. So thank you.
Well, therefore, I have to thank the students for those questions.
Yeah,
it kept us going.
They did.
Yeah, that's really great. So, all right. Well, Maestro Roger Bobo, thank you so much. And we're going to take a half-hour break, and we will be back with the incredible Velvet Brown.
Oh,
so,
yeah. She is.
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. I know that I keep saying that about everybody, but like everyone that we reached out to, and this is one of the benefits of this horrible situation with COVID, is that everyone we reached out to said yes. So it's like a dream team lineup of people. And so it's not like, well, this person lives far away. It's just like, it doesn't matter that Roger lives in Mexico. It's just like, yep. And he's on board. So
incredible that we can do that. I'm still in awe.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Velvet is unbelievable.
Yeah. And I can't wait for all of the, I can't wait for all the questions for her as well. So, all right, everyone, we will see you. The room link will go live quarter till. Room opens 5 minutes before, and then we'll start right at 4 o'clock Eastern.
Thank you, Maestro.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bobo. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.